Hey guys, I'm Siobhan, a fourth-year medical resident in Canada. Before the COVID pandemic, I traveled to Guyana to learn about their healthcare system, and it was an eye-opening experience. I met patients like Terrence, a husband and father of 3, who suddenly developed kidney failure for an unknown reason and relies on dialysis to stay alive. But dialysis hasn't always been readily available in Guyana. In the past 10 years, Dr. Dubé, a retired vascular surgeon, has been working with kidney specialists at McMaster University to create a charitable dialysis center. And in this video, we're going to the dialysis center with Dr. Ingram, one of the nephrologists who travels back and forth to look after these patients, because right now, there aren't any kidney specialists in Guyana.
Yeah.
Aww. Wow.
This place?
Looks really nice. And today I'm really excited because I'm bringing you guys to the Dubé Medical Center. We're going to be talking to patients, to doctors, to nurses, and find out what dialysis is like down here. Your kidneys are essential to filter toxins and maintain the correct balance of electrolytes in your blood. There are many diseases that can cause kidney failure. The most common is diabetes and high blood pressure, but there are also genetic and autoimmune conditions like lupus. When a person's kidneys are no longer functioning, we use a dialysis machine to filter their blood, like an artificial kidney. But this isn't a long-term solution, and there are complications to being on dialysis for so long. So ideally, these patients will receive a kidney transplant to increase their lifespan and their quality of life. All right, so this morning we're going to be doing rounds. So we're heading around and seeing all the patients on the dialysis unit here. So hopefully we'll get a chance to meet some of them if they give consent and they're okay with it. And otherwise, we'll find out how different it is from Canada. How long have you been on dialysis now?
4.5 years.
4.5 years.
I diagnosis with dialysis for the past 3 years now.
I was very sick last year, July. I started doing dialysis in August because I was very, very sick. Swelled foot, vomiting, was sick, and after starting dialysis, I feel much better. Yeah, much better.
And how far do you live from here? How far is...
I got to get down to town. This is about 5 miles.
Okay.
And then I have to pay another 2 miles to get home.
So how long does that take?
To take the bus would take about an hour to get down to town.
Okay.
It depends on how the bus got to travel, and then I got to go down to town, pick up another bus to take me home.
I go distance, I catch a boat, then bus, and then I come here.
A
I
boat?
live over the other side, over the river.
Oh my gosh, you said a boat, a bus?
Yeah.
It's about an hour and a half drive.
About an hour and a half. Wow. Does your family bring you?
Yeah, my wife.
Your wife brings you. Do you have any children at home?
I had 2 sons. One died, I have one alive.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yes, he died when he was a baby.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
very,
it's
very
me
sad.
alone, you know.
Yeah. Wow. And what type of work are you doing?
Maintenance.
Maintenance a lot with your hands?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find you still have, is your energy good to be doing that?
Yeah. A little. Just for today, you feel a little, and then tomorrow everything normal again.
You feel better again?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the cost for do it here is 12,000 Guyana dollars a session. And one session is a lot of money. We don't have it in Guyana. So we're glad for anybody who are willing to assist us in whatever way to help us so we can pay for the dialysis.
So how often do you come here for dialysis?
3 times a week.
3 times.
2 times a week.
2 times a week.
Well, I come every 2 times a week because I can't afford the 3rd time.
Okay.
right? So it's hard.
Well, it was a real pleasure to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, Doc.
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So we can't get any further than this on twice a week, so really he needs to be coming 3 times a week.
Okay, all right.
And of course the problem is money.
Yeah.
Okay, so we ask patients to pay what they can here, but some patients simply don't have the money, and so we have to provide dialysis treatment for free.
Patients who doesn't have plans to get kidney transplant, they will have to spend the rest of their lives doing dialysis, and that's very hard on them because they don't have a donor and they know that the dialysis is quite expensive. So for them, that's hard. And for me, dealing with that, it's really challenging as well. We try to help them out. Like, we try to counsel them. We try to be a friend to them. Try to help them psychologically. But sometimes that's not good enough.
Before this dialysis center opened, there was only one company that just had 5 machines, and they charged such high rates for dialysis that only the wealthiest families could afford it. With this new center, there are 50 machines, and the core principle is that a patient will never be turned away because they can't afford treatment. So patients pay what they can, and then the difference is made up by charitable donations. What that really means is that Dr. Dubé has to come up with about $500,000 every single year to be able to continue treating these patients. One thing that really struck me is how young some of these patients were. Now, the patients that you just met were the ones that were comfortable on camera sharing their stories. But what you didn't see were all the young women, 20s and 30s, who have kidney failure. And now this is extremely different from the older population that we typically see on dialysis in Canada.
And so we noticed that, of course, as soon as we started coming down here, and we think there's probably a couple of things going on. So in Guyana, there's quite a large black population of African ancestry. So we think that certainly a proportion of these folks that are called hypertension probably actually have a genetic disease.
In Africa, there's a parasite that causes a life-threatening disease called sleeping sickness. Some people of African descent have a genetic variant that protects them from the parasite, which is an important evolutionary advantage. But unfortunately, this gene also makes them susceptible to kidney failure.
I'd say probably the other thing is, we don't have much in the way of diagnostic facilities here. So back home, a lot of folks would have a kidney biopsy, would be looking carefully at their urine, be doing a lot of fancy blood work to see if there's any signs of any inflammation. We really don't have that here. So a lot of these inflammatory diseases of the kidneys, like lupus for instance, will often present with high blood pressure. So when you look at some of these younger women here, you kind of wonder whether or not the original disease may have been lupus or something inflammatory, and they just presented with high blood pressure and kidney failure. And you have to think, if this is true, unfortunately, if you could identify these people early, you could treat them and maybe prevent quite a fair bit of this. So that's quite frustrating. Not having a diagnostic facility is quite frustrating. Once somebody gets to dialysis, then the question from that point is, can you transplant them? For these folks to have a reasonable longevity, they need to be transplanted. They're not going to live more than 10 or 20 years on dialysis. And when somebody's 20 or 30 years old, it's just not acceptable.
So a transplant center is definitely the next step, and there are already plans in place to develop that kind of program. But I want to take a second and just step back and recognize what an incredible accomplishment it was to create this dialysis center. So what would you say if I asked you what the biggest challenge would be to set up a dialysis center? Now, personally, I thought that it would be the machines themselves, the technology, the expense. But I was surprised to learn that it all comes down to the water purification system. But it actually makes sense, because you circulate a patient's blood outside their body, it comes in contact with this water and then comes back into their body. It would be a disaster if it wasn't pure water.
The people pastor told me that the water is the most important part of dialysis. Water, water, water. The water has to be red.
So we're outside the dialysis unit, and obviously the most important thing for dialysis is to get ultra pure water. So the blood is dialyzed against a dialysis solution that consists of ultra pure water and some other ions, etc., that we add to clean the blood. So here in Guyana, it's pretty hard to get ultra pure water, so we get water delivered to these big tanks back here, and the water in those tanks then comes through the piping system you see into this room. So the water comes in this room through those pipes, it gets warmed to body temperature, and then it goes through that tank there to be softened. In other words, have the calcium and magnesium taken out. And then it goes through these two tanks here to have a lot of the toxins that can break up red blood cells like chlorine and chloramine taken out. These are things that we normally have in the water. Once it goes through those two tanks, it goes through the magical part of the system, which is called the reverse osmosis here, where essentially the water is pushed through a membrane with very tiny pores to catch any remaining impurities. Once it's pushed through that membrane, it goes through an ultraviolet right there for a final purification. Then it comes back into this big tank, and at the bottom of this tank here you'll see ultra pure water. And that water can go through these pipes to all the dialysis machines. This system has to be capable of generating many, many hundreds of liters of water per hour in order to run 20 or 30 dialysis machines.
Pretty amazing, right? So last thing, I want to share a conversation that I had with Dr. Ingram. Now, as a young doctor just starting out, there are so many opportunities in medicine, and there's so much need both locally and internationally. So I really wanted to know what drew Dr. Ingram to this project, and why has he been doing it for 10 years? What do you get back from it? What do you think?
Well, it fills a hole. I think when you've been doing medicine for 25 or 30 years, you can get into almost like a medicine midlife crisis. You know, you're doing the same thing every day, every week. This is different. It's something I can look forward to every year. Kind of fills a need that I have. Feels like when I come down here, I am doing some good. My expertise is of some value. I'm certainly not going to try to convince you that I'm changing the world or saving Guyana or anything like that. But, you know, I think that my coming down here does give the folks on dialysis some confidence that their medical care is being looked at regularly by somebody who knows something about it. I shouldn't in any way disparage the excellent care they're getting from the nurses here in Guyana. The nurses are fabulous. But, you know, the doctor does need to look over the blood work once in a while and look over the weights and look over the medications, and I think the patients appreciate that.
So with these types of global health initiatives, sustainability is critical to be able to make long-lasting change, which in the end is the goal of any of these projects.
And we are training our first Guyanese full-fledged nephrologist in Hamilton now, who should be back here in a year's time. And obviously, you know, when hopefully the timing will work out well, we can eventually extricate ourselves from this. Once you start a dialysis unit, you can't just walk away, otherwise people will die. So, but on the other hand, you know, we're getting older. At some point, we'll start to retire, and obviously, one of our big goals is to have some experts down here in Guyana taking care of their own countrymen.
Yeah, that idea of like sustainability, right? That a country is sustainable.
The more we can bring the government to the table, the more sustainable it is. And obviously, from the expertise side, the more that we can train Guyanese docs in nephrology and interest them in nephrology and make it attractive, you know, the more the expertise will be available in the country, and ultimately will become unnecessary, which of course is our dream.
All right, just back at the hotel now. You can kind of see the shine from the day. But I feel invigorated today. Honestly, it was so incredible meeting all of these patients, the nurses, the whole team there. It does put things in perspective. It's different than Canada on many levels, from what's available to the population. I still can't get over how young these patients are. We saw a 16-year-old girl, other women who are the same age as me, and it's hard for me to imagine being in that situation, especially when transplant is not something that's really readily available here. So it certainly makes me think, what's my responsibility as a physician? What kind of role can I have to try to help in the future going forward? So these are things that I'm excited about, and I can't wait to collaborate with people in the future to try to make our world a better place. And I don't know, I just don't think it's not just doctors. I just see all sorts of people collaborating in this situation. So I'd love to hear what you think. Good experiences you've had, bad experiences, hopes for the future, your goals. So let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more about my trip in Guyana, be sure to subscribe because there are more coming. Otherwise, I'll be chatting with you soon. So, bye for now.